Little girl enters police station with unbearable smell. Police officer looks under her arm, vomits, and calls 911. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. This is a journey that will stay with you long after it ends. Let's begin. When Officer Jack Peterson lifted the arm of the 7-year-old girl who had just walked into the Riverwood Heights Police Precinct smiling, what he saw made him vomit on the floor. The infected wound under little Lily Thorne's armpit was shocking enough. But what Jack didn't know yet was far more disturbing. She had tried to show this to dozens of adults over the past 8 months, and every single one of them had looked the other way. It was an ordinary Wednesday morning. Jack was counting down the hours to the end of his shift, just 8 months away from retirement after 30 years on the force. The small-town police precinct was quiet the way he liked it. He was organizing paperwork, already dreaming about fishing trips and grandchildren he didn't have yet. When the front door creaked open, a little girl walked in alone. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, wearing a faded blue jacket with long sleeves despite the summer heat. Her dark hair was tangled, her face smudged with dirt, but she was smiling. The kind of innocent, gap-toothed smile that should have warmed any heart. "Hello," she chirped, waving at Jack with her small hand. But something was immediately wrong. A smell followed her into the station. Sharp, sour, unmistakable. The smell of infection, of unwashed clothes, of something deeply wrong. Jack straightened up, his cop instincts kicking in despite his desire for a quiet morning. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said gently, walking around the desk. "Where are your parents?" "I came by myself," Lily said matter-of-factly, still smiling. "I needed help, so I walked here. My librarian said policemen help people." Jack's chest tightened. A child this young alone walking into a police precinct. "What's your name, honey?" "Lily. Lily Thorne." "I'm 7.5. That's a beautiful name." "I'm Officer Jack. Does your mom know you're here, Lily?" The little girl's smile faltered for just a moment. "Mama's sleeping. She sleeps a lot, but it's okay. I can take care of myself mostly." Jack knelt down to her eye level, and the smell hit him stronger. His eyes began to water. "Lily, are you hurt? Is something wrong? My shoulder hurts," she said simply, pointing to her left side. "It's been hurting for a really long time. I thought maybe you could help. Can I see?" Lily nodded and started to lift her sleeve. As the fabric rolled up, Jack's stomach dropped. The skin around her armpit was red, swollen, and showing signs of severe infection. Dark patches spread across her inner arm. It looked like it had been festering for weeks, maybe months. "Sweetheart, I'm just going to look a little closer." "Okay, I won't touch it." Jack leaned in, and what he saw made his vision blur. The wound was deep, infected, surrounded by damaged tissue. The smell was overwhelming. He stumbled backward, made it 2 steps toward the trash can, and vomited. "I'm sorry," Lily said quickly, her voice small. "I know it's yucky. That's why nobody wants to look at it." Jack wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, his heart breaking and his mind racing. "No, baby. No, you didn't do anything wrong. He grabbed his radio with shaking hands. "I need an ambulance at the station now. Child with severe infection, possibly septic. Move fast." He rushed back to Lily, who was pulling her sleeve back down, looking ashamed. Jack gently stopped her. "Don't hide it, sweetheart. We're going to help you. I promise." Nobody else wanted to help," Lily whispered, tears finally filling her eyes. "I showed it to lots of people, but everyone was too busy." Jack felt something crack inside his chest. "What do you mean, honey? Who did you show it to?" "My teacher, the market lady, the man at the gas station. But they all said I just needed to wash better, or that my mama should take me to the doctor. But mama can't. She can't really do stuff right now." As the sound of sirens grew closer, Jack held Lily's small hand in his. This wasn't a simple case of a scraped knee or even basic neglect. This was something much bigger, much darker. How does a child reach this point without anyone truly seeing? The paramedics burst through the door. As they examined Lily, Jack heard one of them mutter to the other, "This has been developing for months. How did nobody catch this?" Jack watched them load Lily onto the gurney, her small hand reaching back toward him. Will you come with me, Officer Jack? I'll be right behind you, sweetheart. I promise. As the ambulance pulled away, lights flashing, Jack stood in the empty parking lot. His hands were shaking. In 30 years on the force, he thought he had seen everything. But he'd never seen this. A child literally rotting away while an entire community looked the other way. He pulled out his phone and dialed. When the Child Protective Services office answered, he said just 5 words. We have a major problem. What Jack didn't know yet was that this wasn't just Lily's story. It was the story of everyone who had seen her and chosen not to truly look. And before this was over, Jack Peterson would have to face the most painful truth of all. He had been one of them. At Riverwood Heights General Hospital, Jack paced the waiting room floor while doctors examined Lily. He wanted to leave to file his report and go home to pretend this was just another case that would resolve itself. But something kept him there, rooted to the spot. A young woman in her late 20s approached him carrying a thick folder. Her badge read, Mia Jenkins, Child Services. Officer Peterson, I'm the social worker assigned to Lily's case. Jack nodded curtly. Good. Then you can handle it from here. I've done my part. Mia's eyes narrowed. Have you? Because I've been looking through our system and there's something you need to see. She opened the folder and pulled out several printed pages. There have been phone calls about Lily Thorne over the past 6 months. Anonymous calls, concerned neighbor, worried bookstore owner, even someone from her school, all expressing concern about a child who seemed overlooked. Jack's jaw tightened. And what happened with those calls? They were logged, flagged for follow-up, but somehow they all got marked as assessed and cleared without any real investigation. Mia's voice carried an edge of frustration. I'm new here, Officer Peterson, but even I can see this doesn't add up. Look, Miss Jenkins, it's Mia. Mia, I'm 8 months from retirement. I've seen hundreds of cases like this. They all end the same way, buried in paperwork, lost in the system. I brought her in. I called you. My job is done. Mia stepped closer, her voice dropping but intensifying. Is it? Because I read your file too, Jack. 30 years of service, decorated officer, known for actually caring. So tell me, are you really going to walk away from a 7-year-old who walked into your precinct asking for help? Or are you going to do what everyone else did? Look the other way. The words hit Jack like a punch. He thought of Lily's small hand in his, her voice saying, nobody else wanted to help. What exactly are you asking me to do? Come with me to visit her home. See where she's been living. Help me understand how this happened. Mia closed the folder. You brought her in, Jack. Don't you want to know the whole story? Jack rubbed his face, feeling every one of his 55 years. Fine, one visit, then I'm out. 30 minutes later, Jack sat in his patrol car, Mia in the passenger seat, driving toward the poorest section of Riverwood Heights. He realized with shame that he hadn't been to this neighborhood in years. The houses grew smaller, more run down. Gardens turned to overgrown weeds. This was the part of town the city council liked to forget existed. It's on the right, Mia said quietly, the yellow house with the broken fence. Jack pulled up to a small, deteriorating structure that looked like it might collapse in a strong wind. Paint peeled from the walls. Windows were covered with blankets instead of curtains. The yard was littered with broken bottles and trash. This is where she lives. Jack's voice was barely a whisper. According to our records, yes. Her mother, Sarah Thorne, 35 years old. No other family listed. Father passed away 4 years ago. Jack stepped out of the car, his heart heavy. As he approached the front door, he could hear movement inside. Slow, shuffling footsteps. He knocked. Mrs. Thorne, this is Officer Jack Peterson. I have your daughter at the hospital. She's safe, but we need to talk. A long pause. Then a woman's voice, confused and fearful. My Lily, what happened to my baby? The door cracked open, and Jack saw a woman who looked far older than 35. Her eyes were unfocused, her clothes stained. But in those eyes, Jack saw something he didn't expect. Genuine fear and love for her child. Mrs. Thorne, can we come in? We need to understand what's been happening here. As Sarah Thorne opened the door wider, allowing them inside, Jack crossed a threshold he didn't even know existed. He was no longer just a cop counting down to retirement. Whether he wanted it or not, he was now part of Lily's story, and he had a terrible feeling that this story was going to change everything. The inside of Sarah Thorne's home told a story of its own. Dishes piled in the sink, empty food containers scattered across counters, and a thick layer of dust covering everything. But what struck Jack most wasn't the mess. It was the sadness that seemed to hang in the air like fog. Sarah sat down heavily on a worn couch, wrapping her arms around herself. "Is Lily okay? Please tell me she's okay." "She's at the hospital getting treatment," Mia said gently, sitting across from her. "Mrs. Thorne, when was the last time Lily saw a doctor?" Sarah's face crumpled in confusion. I, I don't remember. Maybe last year. She had a cold, I think." Her hands trembled. "Everything's been so hard since my husband died. I really do. But some days I can't even get out of bed." Jack walked slowly through the small house, documenting everything with his phone camera. Lily's room was at the back, tiny with a mattress on the floor and a handful of broken toys. But on a small trunk, serving as a table, he found something that made his blood run cold. A notebook. Crayon drawings filled every page. "Mia," Jack called quietly, "you need to see this." Mia joined him, and together they flipped through the pages. Each drawing showed the same thing. A small, dark-haired girl holding up her arm to different adults. A woman at a desk, probably a teacher. An elderly person in front of a building with a cross. The church. A man behind a counter. A store clerk. In every single picture, the adult's face turned away. The last page was different. It showed the police precinct with a smiling officer holding the little girl's hand. Lily had drawn this before she ever walked through that door. She had drawn hope. "She's been trying to tell people for months," Mia whispered, her eyes filling with tears, and they all looked away. Jack's hands shook as he held the notebook. In his 30 years on the force, he'd never felt anything quite like this crushing weight of collective failure. A knock at the door interrupted them. An elderly woman stood on the porch, wringing her hands nervously. "I'm Eleanor Davis. I live next door. I saw the police car, and is everything all right?" Jack stepped outside. "Mrs. Davis, how well do you know Lily?" The woman's face flushed. "I've seen her around. Sweet little thing, always waving, always trying to chat, but She paused, looking ashamed. "I kept my distance, if I'm being honest. She always had that smell, and I didn't want to get involved in other people's business." "Did you ever see anything that concerned you?" Jack pressed. Mrs. Davis shifted uncomfortably. "Well, I saw her trying to show something to Mr. Finnegan after Bible study a few months back. And once she was at the key station tugging on Mr. Roberts' sleeve, but I thought surely someone else would handle it. Surely her mother or her teachers would notice if something was really wrong." Jack felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice level. "Mrs. Davis, did you ever call anyone? Child services, the school, anyone?" "I thought about it," she admitted quietly. "But Sarah seemed so fragile after her husband died. I didn't want to make things worse. I thought maybe I was overreacting." After Mrs. Davis left, Jack returned inside to find Sarah signing papers that Mia had prepared. Consent forms for medical treatment and child services monitoring. Sarah signed everything without really reading, tears streaming down her face. "I love my daughter," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "I never meant for any of this. I couldn't see how bad it had gotten." Back in his car, Jack sat in silence, the notebook on his lap. Mia sat beside him, equally quiet. "She drew you before she met you." Mia finally said she drew someone who would help someone who would see her. Jack opened the notebook to the last page again, staring at the picture of himself. A better version of himself that a desperate 7-year-old had imagined into existence. "I'm the last one," he said slowly. "Everyone else turned away. If I walk away now, then she'll know that even her last hope was just another adult who didn't care enough." Jack started the engine, his retirement plan suddenly feeling hollow and meaningless. "What do we do next?" Mia smiled sadly. "We find out exactly how many people saw Lily Thorne and chose to look away. And then we make sure it never happens again." As they drove away, Jack glanced in his rearview mirror at the small yellow house. Somewhere in a hospital across town, a little girl was wondering if the officer who'd held her hand would be like all the others. Jack made a silent promise. Not this time, Lily. This time someone's going to see you. Jack returned to the hospital the next morning, finding Dr. Helen Quinn reviewing Lily's charts outside the pediatric ward. The doctor looked exhausted, her eyes heavy with concern. Officer Peterson, she said, shaking his hand. I'm glad you're here. We need to talk about Lily. How is she? Stable, thanks to getting her here when you did. But Jack, Dr. Quinn pulled him aside, lowering her voice. This infection didn't happen overnight. Based on the tissue damage and progression, I'd estimate it's been developing for at least 6 to 8 months. Jack felt his chest tighten. 8 months. She has a rare autoimmune condition that affects her skin's healing ability. But here's the thing, it's completely manageable with basic medication and proper hygiene. We're talking about treatments that cost less than $40 a month. The doctor's voice hardened with frustration. This child went to school, went to church, went to store. How does someone suffer for half a year without anyone taking action? Jack had no answer. He left the hospital and drove straight to Riverwood Heights Primary School. The principal, Mr. David Hughes, met him in his office with a defensive posture, arms crossed. Officer Peterson, I'm not sure what you're implying, but we follow all protocols here. I'm not implying anything, sir. I'm asking how a child attends this school for months with a serious medical condition and no one contacts her parent or authorities. Mr. Hughes shifted uncomfortably. Lily had attendance issues. She missed quite a few days, and when she was here, she paused. The other children complained about sitting near her. She had hygiene problems. We sent notes home, but we never got responses. Did anyone follow up on those notes? Visit the home? Call child services? We have 40 teachers and over 500 students, officer. We can't investigate every child who misses school or has trouble at home. Jack's jaw clenched, but he kept his voice steady. Can I see her school records? Reluctantly, Mr. Hughes pulled Lily's file. As Jack flipped through it, something caught his eye. The class photos from the past 2 years, fall and spring pictures, 8 photos total. In every single one, Lily wore the same faded blue jacket with long sleeves. Mr. Hughes, do you notice anything odd about these photos? The principal leaned in, then his face went pale. It's the same outfit, Jack continued, his voice quiet but intense. Same long sleeves even in the spring photos from April and May, when temperatures were in the 90s. A 7-year-old wearing long sleeves in 90 degrees heat, and not one adult thought to ask why. I never looked that closely, Mr. Hughes whispered. She was hiding it, Jack said more to himself than to him. She was trying to cover the wound so people wouldn't see. And instead of asking questions, everyone just decided she was the dirty kid and kept their distance. Jack took photos of the school pictures with his phone. As he stood to leave, Mr. Hughes called out, Officer Peterson, what happens now? Jack turned back. Now I find out how many other people saw what they didn't want to see. In his car, Jack stared at the photos on his phone. 17 pictures over 2 years. 17 opportunities for someone to notice. 17 moments where a simple question, Lily, are you okay? Might have changed everything. His phone rang. Mia's name flashed on the screen. Jack, where are you? Her voice was urgent, breathless. Just leaving the school. What's wrong? I've been going through our database all morning, cross-referencing Lily's case. Jack, you need to get back here right now. I found something in the system. And her voice cracked. You're not going to believe what I'm looking at. What is it, Mia? Just get here fast because what I found means this is so much worse than we thought. Jack started the engine, his heart pounding. As he sped back toward the child services office, one thought consumed him. How deep does this go? How many people knew? How many people saw Lily Thorne reaching out for help and simply walked away? He was about to find out, and the answer was going to shake this entire town to its core. Mia's office was a mess of scattered papers and open files when Jack arrived. She looked up at him, her face a mixture of anger and disbelief. Sit down, she said. You need to see this. She placed a document in front of him. It was a formal report dated 10 months earlier, typed on official school letterhead. The name at the top read Susan Lee, school nurse. Jack read aloud. I am writing to express severe concern about student Lily Thorne, age 7. Over the past 4 weeks, I have observed signs that suggest possible medical concerns that are not being addressed at home. The child exhibits poor hygiene, bowing, appears underweight, and seems withdrawn. I attempted to examine her during a routine health screening, but she became distressed and refused to remove her long-sleeve jacket despite warm weather. I strongly recommend immediate follow-up by child services. Jack looked up at Mia, his hands gripping the paper so tightly it crumpled. This was 10 months ago. What happened to it? Mia pulled up a screen on her computer. It was logged into our system, flagged as priority, and then she clicked through several screens. It was reassigned to a caseworker who marked it as assessed and resolved 4 days later. The notes say, Mother cooperative during home visit. Child appears cared for. Low priority. Case closed. Who was the caseworker? Mia's finger pointed to a name at the bottom of the digital file. Jack felt his blood turn to ice. Marcus Vance, now the city council member. 4 years ago, a social worker. We need to talk to this nurse, Jack said, standing abruptly. 20 minutes later, they found Susan Lee at Riverwood Heights Primary organizing medical supplies in the small nurse's office. She was in her 50s with kind eyes that immediately filled with tears when Jack showed her the report. I remember, she said, her voice breaking. I remember Lily so clearly. She was such a sweet child, always trying to smile, even when you could tell she was hurting. Why didn't you follow up when nothing happened? Jack mused, trying to keep accusation out of his voice. Susan sat down heavily in her chair. I called child services 4 times. Each time they told me the case was being handled. The 4th time, the person on the phone got irritated and said there were families with real emergencies, homes with violence, immediate danger. They said Lily was just a child with hygiene issues and an overwhelmed mother. Not urgent enough, and you accepted that? I didn't want to. Susan's voice rose. But I'm one nurse for 500 children across 2 schools. I see 60 kids some days. I filed the report. I made the calls. I did what I was supposed to do, and the system told me it was handled. What else could I have done? Jack wanted to be angry with her, but all he felt was a crushing sadness. She had tried, she had seen, and the system had failed her too. That afternoon, Jack sat beside Lily's hospital bed. She was coloring in a new book he'd brought her. Her small face focused in concentration. Her arm was bandaged now, receiving treatment through an IV. Lily, Jack said gently, can I ask you some questions? She nodded without looking up from her drawing. Did you try to show your arm to people before you came to see me? Lily's crayon stopped moving. She was quiet for a long moment. I didn't want Mama to get in trouble. You won't get your mama in trouble, sweetheart. I promise, I just need to understand what happened. Mama tries really hard, Lily said, her voice small. She just gets really tired and sad sometimes. Since Daddy went to heaven, she's been different. But she loves me. She really does. Jack felt his throat tighten. Clear his throat. Even now, this child was protecting the parent who couldn't protect her. I know she loves you, honey. I can see that. But you needed help, and that's okay. You didn't do anything wrong. Lily finally looked up at him, her eyes too old for her 7 years. All the grown-ups were so busy. I understand. Grown-ups have important stuff to do. Jack had to leave the room before Lily could see his tears. Outside in the hallway, he leaned against the wall. Susan Lee's report still in his hands. He read the last line again. This child is invisible. Someone please truly see her. Someone had seen, someone had tried, and the system had looked away. Anyway, Jack pulled out his phone and called his captain. I need time off the schedule. There's something I have to do. Jack, you're retiring in 8 months. Just coast to the finish line. I can't, Jack said quietly. Not this time. He hung up and looked back through the window at Lily, coloring peacefully, trusting that finally someone would help. Jack made a silent promise. He wouldn't fail her. Not like everyone else had, but he had no idea just how many people he was about to go up against. Jack changed his approach. Instead of treating Lily like a case to solve, he started visiting her as a friend. He brought coloring books, puzzle games, and boxes of crayons. He sat beside her bed and talked about simple things, her favorite colors, the cartoons she liked, the stories she wanted to hear. Slowly, Lily began to open up. On the 5th day, she pulled a small notebook from under her pillow. It was different from the drawing book Jack had seen at her house. This one had words. Simple, misspelled, heartbreaking words in a child's handwriting. I write in here sometimes, Lily said quietly, when things feel bad. My teacher last year said writing helps when you're sad. Can I read it? Jack asked gently. Lily nodded and handed it to him. Jack opened the notebook with trembling hands. The entries were dated, sporadic, written in crayon and pencil. He turned to a page from 6 months earlier. Today, I tried to show the man at church. He's really nice and talks about God loving everyone. I showed him my arm and said it hurts. He looked at it for 1 second and said, God takes care of everything, and I should pray. I do pray every night. Maybe God is really busy with other kids. Jack's eyes burned. He turned to another page dated 3 months ago. Miss Clark said, I need to take better baths. I told her, I do take baths every day, but the water hurts my arm really bad. She said, I need to try harder and use more soap. I used a whole bottle of soap this week. It still hurts. I think I'm doing it wrong. Another entry from just 8 weeks ago. The bookstore lady asked why I always wear long sleeves. I almost showed her, but then other kids came and she got busy with them. I think grown-ups only have time for kids who aren't yucky like me. Jack had to close the notebook. His hands were shaking too hard to keep reading. Are you mad at me? Lily asked, her voice tiny. No, sweetheart. Never, I'm just... Jack struggled to find words. I'm sad that you thought you were yucky. You're not. You never were. Then why didn't anyone want to help? It was the simplest question in the world, and Jack had no answer that would make sense to a 7-year-old. While Lily napped that afternoon, Jack met with Mia in the hospital cafeteria. She'd been doing research of her own. I went back further in our files, Mia said, spreading documents across the table. 4 years ago, shortly after Lily's father died, there was an initial report filed. A neighbor called saying Sarah Thorne seemed overwhelmed and needed support services. Let me guess, Jack said bitterly. It was closed without action. Worse, someone did visit, filed a report saying everything was fine. Mother was coping well, no intervention needed. Mia pushed the document toward him. The social worker who signed off was Marcus Vance. Jack stared at the signature. Marcus Vance, now one of the most powerful men in Riverwood Heights, sitting on the city council, controlling budgets and policies. 4 years ago, he'd been the one who decided Sarah Thorne didn't need help. He moved up fast, Mia continued. From social worker to city government in less than 3 years. Some people say he's gunning for mayor next election. Did he do a thorough investigation 4 years ago? Mia shook her head. From what I can tell, it was a 45-minute visit. Quick assessment, box checked, case closed. Jack felt something cold settle in his stomach. This wasn't just about one missed report anymore. This was about a system that promoted people who closed cases quickly rather than thoroughly. A system that rewarded looking away. If I go after Vance, Jack said slowly, I'm going after someone with real power. Someone who can make my life very difficult. I know, Mia said, but you saw Lily's notebook. You read what she wrote. Can you really walk away knowing that the man partly responsible is now making decisions that affect hundreds of other children? Jack thought about Lily's words. Maybe God is really busy with other kids. A 7-year-old who thought she wasn't important enough for anyone, not even God, to notice. He stood up, his decision made. Set up a meeting with Vance. Official request for information on the old case. Let's see what he has to say. Mia smiled grimly. Jack, you know he's going to try to bury this, right? Men like him don't admit mistakes. Then we'll make it impossible for him to hide. As Jack left the hospital that evening, he looked back at the window of Lily's room. The lights were on, and he could see her small silhouette sitting up in bed, probably drawing another picture. She had tried to reach so many people. She had knocked on so many doors. And Jack was beginning to realize that those doors were protected by people who had a lot to lose, if the truth came out. He was about to go to war with the most powerful man in town, and he couldn't afford to lose. The city council building stood at the center of Riverwood Heights like a crown jewel, freshly painted, perfectly landscaped, a symbol of progress and prosperity. Jack walked through its polished halls, feeling like an intruder from the forgotten side of town. Marcus Vance's office was on the 4th floor, spacious and decorated with awards and photographs of him shaking hands with important people. The man himself sat behind an enormous mahogany desk, his suit perfectly pressed, his smile practiced and empty. "Officer Peterson," Vance said, not standing to greet him. "I heard you wanted to discuss an old case. I have 15 minutes. Jack placed the file folder on the desk. "4 years ago, you were assigned to evaluate Sarah Thorne and her daughter Lily. You closed the case after one visit, marking it as resolved." Vance barely glanced at the folder. "I handled hundreds of cases back then, officer. I can't be expected to remember every single family. This family's daughter just spent 4 days in the hospital with a severe infection that developed over 8 months. An infection that could have been prevented if someone had provided the support services they clearly needed." Vance's expression didn't change, but his eyes grew colder. "Are you suggesting I failed in my duties 4 years ago?" "I'm asking how a 45-minute visit was enough to determine that a grieving widow with a young child needed no assistance whatsoever. Because that's what the system allows," Vance said calmly. 45 minutes per case when you have 50 cases on your desk. You make the best assessment you can, and you move on. "Resources are limited, officer. We have to prioritize." "Prioritize," Jack repeated. "And how do you decide who's worth helping?" Vance stood now, his voice taking on an edge. "Careful, Officer Peterson. You're 8 months from retirement with a full pension. It would be unfortunate if unfounded accusations damage that." "Is that a threat? It's a reality check." Vance walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Riverwood Heights is finally recovering. We have new businesses coming in, property values rising, investors interested. The last thing we need is a scandal about how we failed some unfortunate family. It makes the whole town look bad." Jack felt his anger rising. "A child suffered for months and you're worried about property values." "I'm worried about the thousands of families who live here and depend on this town's economic health," Vance shot back. "You want to help children, officer. Keep this town thriving so their parents have jobs and futures. One sad story doesn't change the bigger picture. Her name is Lily," Jack said quietly. "And she's not a story. She's a real child who asked for help over and over. And everyone, including you, looked away." Vance turned back to him, his face hard. "I did my job within the parameters I was given. If you have a problem with how child services operates, take it up with the state. But I suggest you think very carefully before making noise about this case." "And why is that?" "Because I have friends, Officer Peterson. The police chief and I fish together. The mayor and I have known each other for 25 years. If you push this, you'll find yourself investigating noise complaints until retirement day." Vance returned to his desk. "Or worse, you might discover that your pension paperwork has some unfortunate complications." Jack stared at the man across from him and finally understood. This wasn't about one negligent social worker. This was about a whole system that promoted people who protected its image rather than its people. Vance hadn't risen to power despite failing Lily. He'd risen because he knew how to bury problems quietly. "Are we done here?" Vance asked. Jack picked up his folder. "Not even close." As he left the building, Jack's phone buzzed, a text from his captain. "My office tomorrow morning. We need to talk about your recent activities." Jack sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel. Vance was already making moves, calling in favors, building walls. The most powerful man in Riverwood Heights had just made it clear: back off or lose everything. But Jack couldn't shake the image of Lily's notebook, her childish handwriting, asking why God was too busy for her. He pulled out his phone and called Mia. "He threatened me, which means we're getting close to something he wants to keep hidden." "Jack, are you sure you want to keep pushing? This man can destroy your career." Jack looked back at the city council building, gleaming and pristine, built on a foundation of buried truths and convenient blindness. "He already destroyed something more important," Jack said. "He helped create a system where children like Lily become invisible. I'm not backing down." As he drove away, Jack didn't notice the car that pulled out behind him or the person inside making a phone call. The war had begun, and Jack was about to discover just how far powerful people would go to protect their secrets. The next morning, Jack sat across from Police Chief Reynolds, whose face was carved from stone. "You're being reassigned," the chief said flatly. "Desk duty until retirement. No field work, no active investigations, You're benching me for doing my job. I'm protecting you from yourself, Jack. Marcus Vance called me personally, said, you've been harassing him, making wild accusations. I need you to step back and let this go. Jack stood abruptly. A child was harmed because people like Vance didn't do their boss, and now you want me to pretend it didn't happen. I want you to reach retirement with your reputation intact. Reynolds' voice rose. Take the win, Jack. The girl is getting help. The system is working now. Let it go. Jack walked out without another word, but worse was coming. 3 days later, Jack's phone exploded with notifications. He opened the local news website and felt his stomach drop. The headline screamed, Local Mother Under Investigation for Child Endangerment. Exclusive photos and details. The article named Sarah Thorne. It included photos of her house, descriptions of the conditions, even details about Lily's medical situation that should have been confidential. The comment section was vicious, calling Sarah a monster, demanding she be arrested. Jack's hand shook as he called Mia. How did this get out? I don't know, Mia said, her voice panicked. All case files are supposed to be sealed. Someone with access leaked everything. Jack drove immediately to Sarah's house, but neighbors blocked the street. Angry people shouted, holding signs, Protect our children. Justice for Lily. Someone had spray-painted monster across Sarah's front door. Police officers were loading Sarah into an ambulance. She was having what looked like a complete breakdown, crying uncontrollably, barely able to stand. What happened? Jack demanded of the officer. She called 911, saying she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, panic attack most likely. We're taking her to the hospital for evaluation. Jack's heart sank. Sarah wasn't a monster. She was a broken woman who'd needed help just as much as her daughter. And now the whole town was treating her like a criminal. But the worst blow came at the hospital. Jack went to check on Lily and found her room's TV on playing the news coverage. She sat frozen in bed, staring at images of her house, her mother's face, hearing strangers call her mama terrible names. Lily, sweetheart, you told them, Lily whispered, not looking at him. You promised you'd help, but you told everyone our secrets. No, honey, I didn't. Go away. Lily pulled the blanket over her head. I don't want to talk to you anymore. A nurse gently but firmly escorted Jack out. She needs space right now, officer. In the hallway, Jack leaned against the wall, devastated. Everything he tried to protect had just shattered. Sarah was hospitalized. Lily felt betrayed, and someone, he suspected Vance, had leaked confidential information to destroy the case and discredit him. He sat alone in the hospital chapel, head in his hands. 30 years of service, and it had come to this. He'd failed the one child who'd trusted him. His phone rang, a number he hadn't called in 4 years. His daughter, Chloe. Dad, I saw the news. Are you okay? Jack's voice broke. No, I'm not. Where are you? Hospital, sitting in a chapel trying to figure out how everything went so wrong. There was a pause, then Chloe said something that surprised him. Stay there, I'm coming. An hour later, Chloe Peterson walked into the chapel. She was 32 years old now, a therapist living in the next town over. They hadn't spoken since a terrible argument 4 years ago about Jack never being there for her growing up. She sat beside him without a word. I messed up, Jack said quietly. With that little girl. With you. With everything. Yeah, Chloe agreed. You did. You spent my whole childhood chasing cases, saving strangers. I tried to tell you I needed help when I was struggling, but you were always too busy, just like everyone was too busy for that little girl. Jack closed his eyes. I'm sorry, Chloe. I'm so sorry. I know you are. Chloe took his hand. But here's the thing, Dad. You're finally seeing it. You're finally understanding what it feels like to be invisible to the people who are supposed to care. That little girl is showing you what I felt for years. I don't know how to fix this. You do the thing you never did for me. You don't give up. You don't walk away when it gets hard. Chloe squeezed his hand. Lily needs someone who won't abandon her when the system turns against you. Can you be that person? Jack looked at his daughter, seeing her clearly for the first time in years. I don't know if I can do this alone. Good thing you're not alone anymore. Chloe smiled sadly. I'm a child therapist, Dad. Let me help you help her, and maybe we can fix us too. For the first time in days, Jack felt a small spark of hope. He wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot. Chloe visited Lily's hospital room the next day. Jack waited outside, watching through the window as his daughter sat beside the little girl, who wouldn't even look at him anymore. Chloe didn't push. She brought a puzzle and quietly started working on it. After 20 minutes, Lily peeked out from under her blanket, watching the pieces come together. "Want to help?" Chloe asked softly. Slowly, Lily emerged and picked up a puzzle piece. They worked in silence for a while. "My dad messed up," Chloe finally said. "He didn't mean to hurt you. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes even when they're trying to help. He told everyone about my mama," Lily whispered. "Actually, he didn't. Someone else did. Someone who wanted to stop your dad from helping you. Bad people do that sometimes when good people get too close to the truth." Lily looked up confused. "Why would someone want to stop him from helping me?" "Because helping you means showing everyone that a lot of people made mistakes, and some people would rather hide mistakes than fix them." Chloe found another puzzle piece. "My dad isn't perfect, Lily, but he's one of the good ones. He's not going to stop trying." Over the next hour, using gentle questions and careful patience, Chloe helped Lily talk about something she'd kept buried deep inside. "I tried so many times," Lily said, tears streaming down her face. "I showed my teacher, Miss Clark, 3 times, but she just said I needed to wash better. I told her washing hurt my arm, but she said I had to try harder." Chloe held Lily's hand while she continued. "I went to the bookstore after school one day. The nice bookstore lady always smiled at me. I pulled up my sleeve and showed her, but then a bunch of other kids came in being loud, and she had to help them check out books. I waited, but she got busy and I had to go home." "What about church?" Chloe asked gently. "Mr. Finnegan talks about how God loves everyone. I thought maybe he could help." "After church, I showed him my arm and said it really hurt. He looked at it for just a second and said, 'God takes care of his children. You just pray and trust him.' So I prayed every night, but it kept getting worse." Lily wiped her eyes with her good hand. "At the gas station, I tried to show Mr. Roberts, the manager. He's always nice and gives me a small soda sometimes. But when I showed him my arm, he made a face and stepped back. He said, 'Sweetheart, your mama needs to take you to a doctor.' I told him mama couldn't right now, but then his phone rang and he walked away talking to someone else." Chloe had to fight back her own tears. "Lily, do you know what all of this means? That I'm not important enough?" "No, honey. It means that grown-ups failed you, every single one of them. Not because you weren't important, but because they were scared or busy or didn't want to get involved. That's not your fault. That's their fault." Outside the room, Jack listened to every word, his heart breaking into smaller and smaller pieces. When Chloe emerged an hour later, Jack stood waiting. "She'll talk to you now," Chloe said. "But Dad, you need to hear something first." That little girl tried to get help from at least a dozen different adults, teachers, church people, librarians, store workers. Every single person saw something wrong and chose not to act. This isn't about 1 or 2 people missing signs. This is about an entire community turning away. Jack entered Lily's room. She looked at him with red, puffy eyes. "I'm sorry I got mad at you," Lily said quietly. Jack knelt beside her bed. "You had every right to be mad, sweetheart, but I need you to know something. I didn't tell those people your secrets, and I'm not going to stop helping you no matter what happens." "Why?" Lily asked. "Everyone else stopped because you walked into my police precinct and trusted me when no one else would listen, and I'm not going to let you down." Jack pulled out his notebook. "Lily, I need you to help me remember everyone you tried to show your arm to. Every person, every place. Can you do that?" Together they made a list. It was longer than Jack imagined. 16 different adults, 16 chances for someone to act. After Lily fell asleep, Jack met Chloe in the hallway. She had news. "I called a friend who works for a documentary journalism organization. They're interested in covering this story, the real story, not the sensational garbage the local news put out. But they need evidence that this was systematic, not just 1 or 2 people missing signs." Jack held up the list Lily had given him. "We're going to visit every single place on this list, every person who saw and did nothing, and we're going to make them tell the truth. That's going to make a lot of people very uncomfortable. Good. Jack said it should. As Jack left the hospital that night, he felt something he hadn't felt in days. Purpose. Lily had asked the most important question of all. Why didn't anyone see me? And Jack was going to make sure everyone heard the answer. Over the next 48 hours, Jack and Chloe became investigators on a mission. They visited every location on Lily's list, accompanied by David Miller, a documentary filmmaker with a camera and a determination to expose the truth for Ebon's stories. Their first stop was Riverwood Heights Primary. Miss Clark, Lily's teacher, sat across from them in her classroom, her hands trembling. I remember, she admitted, tears forming in her eyes. Lily came to me 3 times. 3 times she tried to show me her arm. The first time I thought it was just a rash. The second time I was dealing with another student's emergency. The third time, her voice broke. The third time I told her she needed to bathe better and sent her back to her seat. Why didn't you call her mother or a nurse? Jack asked. I marked it in the system as a hygiene concern. I thought someone else would follow up. I had 30 other students to worry about. Miss Clark covered her face with her hands. I called her the messy kid in my notes. I actually wrote that. What kind of teacher does that? At the Riverwood Public Library, the head librarian, Mrs. Thompson, went pale when they showed her a photo of Lily. I remember her, she whispered. She came in after school sometimes. One day she tried to show me something under her sleeve, but a group of students came in being disruptive, and I had to handle them. When I looked back, she was gone. Mrs. Thompson's eyes filled with regret. I thought about her later that day, wondered what she wanted to show me. But I got busy with other things, and I just forgot. Mr. Finnegan of Community Faith Center was harder to face. He was a kind man in his 60s, beloved in Riverwood Heights. When Jack told him why they were there, he sat down heavily in a church pew. Lily showed me her arm after Sunday service. He said, his voice thick with emotion. I saw the redness. I saw her wince when I touched her shoulder. And I told her that God would take care of it. I told her to pray. He looked up at Jack with devastated eyes. I've been a minister for 35 years. I know the signs of children in need, but I was in a hurry that day. I had a dinner commitment, so I gave her a platitude instead of real help. At Roberts' Gas and Market, the store manager. Mr. Roberts sat in his office watching the footage David had recorded. I didn't want to get involved, he admitted. That little girl showed me her arm at the register. It smelled bad. I could see it was infected. But I thought her mother should handle this, not me. So I told her to have her mother take her to a doctor. And I walked away. He paused. I walked away from a 7-year-old asking for help because I didn't want the complication. Each interview revealed the same pattern. People knew something was wrong, but everyone assumed someone else would handle it. Meanwhile, Mia made her most shocking discovery yet in the county records. She called Jack Jack, I found medical records. 10 months ago, Sarah actually took Lily to County General Emergency Room. She tried to get help. Jack felt his world tilt. What happened? The doctor on duty did a quick assessment, said it wasn't an immediate emergency, gave them a prescription for basic ointment, and told Sarah to follow up with a specialist. Mia's voice hardened, but he never filed a mandatory report. He never called child services, and Sarah couldn't afford the specialist, so nothing happened. Jack closed his eyes. Even when Sarah tried to do the right thing, the system failed her. That evening, Jack and Chloe compiled everything. 16 adults who saw and did nothing. 5 official reports filed and ignored. 1 emergency room visit that led nowhere. This isn't about one bad person, Chloe said, looking at the evidence spread across Jack's kitchen table. This is about an entire system that made it easy to look away. Jack's phone buzzed. A message from Mia. City Council emergency meeting tomorrow. Vance is trying to shut down the investigation. We need to be there. Jack looked at the faces in the photographs. Lily's teachers, her pastor, the librarian, the store manager. Good people who'd made terrible choices. Tomorrow we make them all see what they did, Jack said. No more looking away. The city council chambers were packed. News cameras lined the back wall. Jack stood at the podium, a folder in his hands containing every piece of evidence he and Mia had gathered. Marcus Vance sat at the counsel table, his expression carefully neutral, but Jack could see the tension in his jaw. "I'm here to present findings on the case of Lily Thorne," Jack began. His voice was steady, though his heart pounded. "But before I do, I have an announcement." He pulled out a folded letter and held it up. "This morning, I submitted my resignation from the Riverwood Heights Police Department, effective immediately." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Chief Reynolds' face went red. "I'm also using my retirement savings to file a civil lawsuit against this municipality for systematic failure to protect a vulnerable child." Jack's voice grew stronger. "Not because I want to punish individuals, but because this system needs to change." Vance leaned forward. "Officer Peterson, this is highly inappropriate." "What's inappropriate," Jack interrupted, "is that 16 adults saw a suffering child and did nothing. What's inappropriate is that official reports were filed and ignored. What's inappropriate is that we have a system that rewards people for closing cases quickly rather than thoroughly." He opened his folder. "I have statements from teachers, church volunteers, librarians, store employees, all admitting they saw Lily Thorne in distress and chose not to act. I have medical records showing her mother tried to get help and was turned away. And I have documentation showing that Councilman Vance himself closed an earlier case on this family after just 45 minutes of investigation." The room erupted in whispers. Vance stood, his composure cracking. "This is a witch hunt. I followed procedure. Procedure that prioritizes paperwork over children." Jack shot back. "I spent 30 years wearing this badge, and I'm ashamed that I was part of a system that made it so easy to ignore Lily. How many other children are invisible because we're all too busy checking boxes?" Jack pulled out the final piece of evidence, Lily's school essay from 9 months ago. He read it aloud. "My biggest wish is that someone would ask if I'm really okay, not just pretend to ask." The silence in the room was deafening. "Her teacher gave this an A+, Jack said quietly, and never asked the question. He looked directly at Vance. "You built a career on closing cases. You rose to power by making problems disappear on paper. But Lily didn't disappear. She walked into my precinct, showed me her suffering, and asked for help. And I'll be damned if I let this system bury her story the way it tried to bury her." Vance's face was stone. "You're throwing away your career for this." "I'm choosing what matters more." Jack closed his folder. "I've already lost my pension fighting this, but if it means one child doesn't suffer the way Lily did, it's worth it." The council chambers erupted. Reporters surged forward. Vance tried to call for order, but the damage was done. By the next morning, the story had gone national, covered by Ebon stories. 3 days later, facing public pressure and media scrutiny, Marcus Vance resigned from the city council. Jack sat in his empty apartment, the walls bare where his police commendations used to hang. His phone buzzed constantly, messages of support, interview requests, threats from people who thought he'd gone too far. One message stood out. It was from someone anonymous. "Thank you. Because of you, I finally had the courage to ask for help for my son. You saved more than just Lily." Jack closed his eyes, feeling the weight lift slightly. He'd lost his career, his financial security, his reputation in some circles, but he'd kept his promise to a 7-year-old girl who trusted him. The day before Lily's custody hearing, Jack drove to Riverwood Behavioral Health Center, where Sarah Thorne had been receiving treatment for the past 4 weeks. He found her in the common room looking more present than he'd ever seen her. The fog that had clouded her eyes was lifting. She was on proper medication, attending therapy, eating regularly. She looked like the woman she might have been if life hadn't beaten her down. "Officer Peterson," Sarah said softly, gesturing to the chair across from her, "I saw what you did at the council meeting. It's on the news everywhere. I just told the truth." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I want to tell you my truth too. I loved my daughter every single day, but after my husband died, something broke inside me. I couldn't get out of bed, couldn't think straight. I saw Lily hurting, but my mind told me it wasn't that bad, that it would get better tomorrow. Always tomorrow." Her voice cracked. "I kept promising myself I'd handle it tomorrow, and tomorrow kept not coming." "I know you love her," Jack said gently. "I took her to the emergency room once," Sarah continued. 10 months ago, I was having a good day, a clear day. I saw her arm and got scared, but the doctor said it wasn't urgent, gave me a cream I couldn't afford to refill, and told me to see a specialist I couldn't afford to visit. And my sick brain took that as permission to stop worrying. She wiped her tears. I failed her in ways I'm only now understanding. A social worker entered with papers. Sarah signed them without hesitation. Temporary custody to a foster family, the Hamiltons, while she continued treatment. Will she forgive me? Sarah asked Jack. Kids have big hearts, Jack said. If you keep getting better, keep showing up. I think she will. That evening, Jack had dinner with Chloe at a small restaurant outside of town. They sat by the window watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. I have something to tell you, Chloe said, a small smile playing at her lips. I'm pregnant 4 months. Jack's eyes went wide. Chloe, I'm going to be a grandfather. If you want to be a real one, not the kind who's too busy to show up. Jack reached across the table and took his daughter's hand. I want to be there for every moment. I promise you. I believe you. Chloe said, you know why? Because I watched you sacrifice everything for a little girl you barely knew. If you can do that for Lily, I know you'll do it for your grandchild. They talked late into the evening about the past, about mistakes, about forgiveness. Jack told her about all the moments he'd missed in her childhood, all the times he'd chosen work over her. Chloe told him about the years of therapy it took to understand that his absence wasn't her fault. We can't fix the past, Chloe said, but we can choose the future. Later that night, Jack sat at his kitchen table and wrote a letter. It was addressed to Lily, but he knew she was too young to read it now. Maybe one day when she was older, someone would give it to her. Dear Lily, I want you to know that what happened was never your fault. You were braver than any adult I've ever met. You kept trying, kept asking, kept hoping. The adults failed you, not the other way around. You taught me something important, that seeing someone means more than just looking at them. It means truly paying attention, asking the hard questions, and caring enough to act. I promise you, no matter what happens tomorrow, I will spend the rest of my life making sure other children don't become invisible the way you did. You were always worthy of being seen. Always, Amy. He folded the letter and placed it in an envelope, knowing tomorrow would bring answers about Lily's future, about justice, about whether anything he'd done had mattered. But tonight, for the first time in months, Jack Peterson slept peacefully. He'd done the right thing. Finally, the morning before the custody hearing, Mia called Jack with urgency in her voice. I found something that changes everything we thought we knew. Jack met her at her office within the hour. She had medical records spread across her desk, highlighted and annotated. 10 months ago, Sarah did take Lily to County General Emergency Room, Mia explained. But look at what happened. Jack read the doctor's notes. Child presence with skin irritation and inflammation. Mild infection. Prescribed topical antibiotic cream. Advised follow-up with dermatology specialist within 3 weeks. Mother appears anxious but cooperative. Non-emergency situation. Discharged. He saw the infection. Jack set his voice tight. He saw it and sent them home with a cream. There's more. Mia continued. State law requires medical professionals to report suspected cases of neglect to child services. This doctor never filed a report, never followed up, never checked if they made it to the specialist. Jack felt anger rising in his chest. When Sarah couldn't afford the specialist, nobody reached back out. Nobody. And here's the heartbreaking part. Look at what Sarah told the nurse. Mia pointed to intake notes. Patient's mother states, I'm trying my best, but things are hard right now. I just need to know if this is serious. Nurse noted mother appeared depressed and overwhelmed. They saw she was struggling. Jack said they saw she was asking for help in her own way, and they just sent them home. Mia pulled out her phone. I tracked down the doctor. His name is Dr. Alan Stewart. He transferred to a hospital in Texas 3 months ago. I called him this morning. What did he say? Mia played a recording on her phone. Dr. Stewart's voice came through weary and defensive. I remember the case vaguely. We see 70, 80 patients per shift in that ER. The child's infection wasn't life-threatening at that moment. I gave them a prescription and discharge instructions. I assumed they'd follow through with the specialist visit. I can't be responsible for what happens after patients leave. Mia's voice came through the recording. Doctor, you saw a struggling mother and a child with an untreated condition. Why didn't you file a mandatory report? A long pause. Then look, in a perfect world, I'd have time to investigate every family situation. But we're understaffed, overwhelmed. I made a judgment call that this wasn't the worst case I'd see that day. I thought I thought someone else in the system would catch it if it was really serious. Jack closed his eyes. There it was again. That phrase, someone else. Everyone thought someone else would handle it, Jack said quietly. The teacher thought the nurse would. The nurse thought social services would. Social services thought the doctor would. The doctor thought the specialist would. And Lily fell through every single crack because everyone assumed someone else was paying attention. Mia nodded. This wasn't one person's failure, Jack. It was a systematic failure, a chain where every link broke at the same time. Jack looked at the mountain of evidence they'd compiled over the past weeks. 16 adults who saw and didn't act. 5 reports filed and ignored. 1 ER visit that led nowhere. All because everyone thought someone else would be the one to truly see Lily. The hearing is in 2 hours, Jack said, gathering the documents. It's time everyone heard the complete truth. As he drove to the courthouse, Jack thought about Lily's question. Why didn't anyone see me? Now he finally had the full answer, and it was more devastating than he'd ever imagined. Not because people were cruel, but because they all made the same assumption that their small part didn't matter, that someone else would step up, that one person's inaction couldn't possibly cause real harm. But when everyone thinks that way, children like Lily become invisible. The courthouse loomed ahead. Today, Jack would make sure that never happened again. The courtroom was packed. National news cameras lined the hallway outside. Jack sat beside Mia at the petitioner's table, folders of evidence stacked before them. Across the room, the city's attorney looked uncomfortable, shuffling papers nervously. Judge Laura Miller entered, her expression grave. She'd reviewed the preliminary materials, and everyone could see this wasn't going to be an ordinary custody hearing. Before we address custody arrangements, the judge began, this court needs to understand how we arrived at this point. Mr. Peterson, you've compiled a report. Jack stood. Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to present findings that go beyond this one case. The city's attorney objected. Your Honor, this hearing is about placement of the child, not an investigation into... I'll allow it, Judge Miller interrupted. The child's welfare requires understanding the complete picture. Proceed, Mr. Peterson. Jack took a breath. Your Honor, over the past month, we've documented 16 separate instances where adults witnessed Lily Thorne in distress and failed to act. Teachers, church volunteers, medical professionals, store employees, all saw clear signs that this child needed help. He placed the first folder before the judge. But it goes deeper than that. We've discovered that over a 2-year period, there were 5 separate reports filed with the Child Services concerning Lily and her mother. 5 different people trying to get help for this family. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Miller called for order. Every single report, Jack continued, his voice steady but intense, was marked as assessed and resolved without proper investigation. Why? Because the system prioritized closing cases quickly over helping families thoroughly. Mia stood and presented medical records. 10 months ago, Sarah Thorne took Lily to County General ER. The attending physician saw the infection, prescribed basic treatment, but failed to file a mandatory report when he observed signs of an overwhelmed parent and deteriorating medical condition. The city's attorney tried to intervene. Your Honor, we can't hold individual professionals accountable for judgment calls made under pressure. These weren't judgment calls, Jack said forcefully. These were systematic failures disguised as individual decisions. He pulled out the next piece of evidence. 9 months ago, Lily wrote an essay in school. The assignment was to write about her biggest wish. Jack held up the paper so everyone could see Lily's childish handwriting. He read aloud, "My biggest wish is that someone would ask if I'm really okay, not just pretend to ask." The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Several people in the gallery were crying. Her teacher gave this an A+, Jack said quietly, and never asked the question, never looked deeper because it was easier to assume someone else would notice. Someone else would care. Someone else would act. Judge Miller removed her glasses, visibly moved. Mr. Peterson, what is your recommendation? That this court order a complete audit of all child welfare cases closed in the past 5 years in Riverwood Heights. That mandatory training be implemented for teachers, medical professionals, and anyone who works with children, and that we stop assuming someone else will be the one to see the invisible children in our community. The city's attorney stood. Your Honor, while these failures are regrettable, they represent individual mistakes, not institutional. That's not accurate, Mia interrupted, standing. And I have proof. She pulled out a final folder. These are internal emails from the Child Services Department showing a directive to prioritize high-risk cases, which in practice meant focusing on wealthier neighborhoods where complaints might generate political pressure while systematically neglecting cases in poor areas. The courtroom exploded with noise. Judge Miller banged her gavel repeatedly. Order. I will have order. When quiet returned, the judge's face was stern. This court finds clear evidence of systematic failure at multiple levels. I'm ordering an immediate investigation by the State Oversight Committee. She turned to the Child Services representative. And I want a full review of every case closed in this county for the past 5 years. She looked down at the papers before her. As for Lily Thorne, Judge Miller's expression softened. I understand a foster family, the Hamiltons, have expressed interest in long-term placement. A couple in their 40s stood in the back, Robert and Jane Hamilton. Jane spoke, her voice gentle but clear. Your Honor, we've been visiting Lily at the hospital. We don't have children of our own, and we'd like to provide her with a permanent home with regular visitation from her mother as she continues treatment. Judge Miller nodded. Temporary custody is granted to the Hamilton family with the goal of permanent adoption pending Sarah Thorne's continued treatment in progress. This is what we should have done 2 years ago, given this family's support instead of abandonment. As the hearing ended, Jack felt Mia grip his arm. We did it, she whispered. We actually did it. Jack looked around the courtroom at all the faces, some ashamed, some angry, some relieved. But all of them were finally truly seeing what happens when everyone looks away. 3 months later, Jack drove to a cheerful house on Elm Street. The Hamiltons had transformed their home with bright colors and a swing set in the backyard. Lily met him at the door, her smile genuine and reaching her eyes. Her arm had healed, leaving only faint scars. But more importantly, the weight she'd carried for so long was gone. Jack, come see my room. She pulled him inside to a bedroom filled with drawings covering every wall. But these were different from the ones in her old notebook. In these pictures, Lily drew herself in the center. Big, colorful, surrounded by smiling faces. Look, I'm not hiding anymore, she said proudly. Jane Hamilton appeared in the doorway. Sarah visited yesterday. They had a good talk. She's doing much better. Jack knelt beside Lily. Are you happy here, sweetheart? Lily hugged him tight. I am. And Jack, thank you for not looking away. Outside, Jack watched Lily run into the backyard to play, her laughter carrying on the wind. His phone buzzed. A photo from Chloe of his newborn grandson, Jack Jr. He'd lost his career, but gained something more valuable. Purpose. He now volunteered at a children's shelter, teaching others to truly see the invisible kids. As Lily waved from the swing, Jack remembered her question from months ago. Why didn't anyone see me? Now finally everyone did, and they would never look away again.